Arab executive gave money to a poor African homeless woman, and she stole his wallet. Based on a true story, he stopped his luxury car in the middle of a dusty road in Dakar to help a barefoot woman begging on the sidewalk. She had nothing, just torn clothes, a fragile child on her back, and eyes full of silent sorrow. When he handed her a wad of cash, she looked at him like he was the first human to see her. But moments later, he realized his wallet was gone. What followed wasn't a call to the police, but something no one expected, not even him. This story is based on real events that will challenge everything you think about trust, compassion, and justice. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss any of our powerful and emotional stories inspired by real-life moments of courage, betrayal, and redemption. Zaid al-Rashid had seen the world from heights most people only dream of. At 42, the Saudi-born executive owned oil terminals, tech startups in Singapore, and half a dozen skyscrapers bearing his name in golden Arabic calligraphy. Suits were custom-made in Milan, his pens engraved with emeralds, and his watch an exclusive Patek Philippe Coude by a family's future, and still have change. But that morning in Senegal, something felt different. The air was thick with the scent of salt and burning tires. As his motorcade rolled down a lesser-known street outside Dakar, Zaid signaled for the driver to slow. Then, against protocol, he ordered him to stop. The guards stiffened. They weren't used to abrupt deviations, especially not in streets like this. Overcrowded, loud, chaotic. But Zaid was staring out the window, his gaze locked on something no one else had noticed. She was sitting under a half-collapsed awning, her legs folded beneath her. Her skin was the color of sun-warmed mahogany, but dirt dulled it. Her long black hair was matted and dusty, her cheeks hollow. A baby, no older than one, clung to her back inside a faded green wrap. Her hands were outstretched, trembling not with drama, but from hunger. Zayd opened the door himself. "Sir, we advise you to stay in the vehicle," one of the guards began. He ignored him. The polished leather of his shoes touched the dirt, and instantly, the noises of the city grew louder. He walked toward her, eyes steady, body calm. The woman looked up, startled. She didn't beg. She didn't even speak, just stared, her mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't decide whether he was real. Zayd crouched in front of her. "What is your name?" he asked in French. She blinked. Then softly, "Aminata." He reached into his blazer, not his wallet, he didn't carry one, but a folded stack of West African francs clipped with a golden pin. Roughly 100,000 CFA, about $160. But in that neighborhood, it might as well have been a kingdom. He handed it to her. Her hand shook as she accepted it. She didn't say thank you. Her eyes stayed on him, wide, wet, disbelieving. And then, for a second, her lips trembled into something like a smile. Zaid stood, gave a slight nod, and turned back toward the car. The guards were already opening the door. He stepped in. It wasn't until 10 minutes later, when they stopped at the hotel, that he noticed the silence of panic around him. "My wallet," he muttered. He always kept it inside the side panel of the car. His passport, identification, bank keys everything gone. The security team went into immediate alert. One of them began barking orders into a radio. The driver suggested they review the street cameras. Another cursed under his breath in Arabic. But Zaid lifted his hand. "Stop." The room fell quiet. "I know who took it," he said. The men looked at him. His face was unreadable. "You want us to retrieve it?" one asked. "We can go now." Zaid turned toward the window. A sliver of orange light touched the glass, the start of sunset. "No," he said quietly. "If she took it, she has her reasons." They didn't understand. Neither did he. Not yet. That night, Zaid couldn't sleep. The hotel was magnificent, polished marble floors, infinity pools, silence muffled by wealth. But his mind was back in that dirt road, in the stillness of Aminata's face, in the absence of thanks. He remembered how her eyes didn't follow the money. They followed him. And then the wallet. The memory was so vivid now. A brush against his suit jacket, a tug, her hand had moved. It hadn't been clumsy. It had been intentional. But it wasn't hatred he felt. It was confusion. He rose before dawn and told his team he needed to take a walk alone. They objected, of course. He silenced them. An hour later he was back on that same road. The morning light was crueler now, exposing every crack in the cement, every scar in the pavement. He found the spot where she had been, empty. He asked a street vendor nearby if he had seen her. The man nodded. "She comes here every day, but she moves. Sometimes over there, sometimes by the mosque wall. Do you know where she lives?" The man scoffed. "She doesn't live. She survives." Zaid offered him a second wad of cash. The vendor hesitated, then pointed. "Go to the old station behind the market. Ask for Sira. She knows." The old train station had been abandoned for years. Rusted pillars, shattered windows, and vines growing through broken benches. Zaid entered with careful steps. No one here wore polished shoes. No one here had guards. Children ran past him barefoot. A man with one eye watched him from the shadows. The air smelled of firewood and sweat. He found a woman named Sira, wrinkled, strong eyes like carved stone. I'm looking for Aminata, Zaid said. Sira stared at him. Why? She took something of mine. Sira tilted her head. If she took it, you deserved to lose it. I didn't come to punish her. Then why? Zaid hesitated. I want to understand. The woman studied him, then motioned. With her chin, third corridor. Behind the curtain, Zaid walked into the dim space. A child scurried away. Behind a torn blue cloth, he found her. Aminata was seated on a mat. The baby lay beside her, sleeping. Her hands were wrapped around something, his wallet. She looked up and froze. Her breath hitched. Her body tensed. He didn't speak. She slowly lifted the wallet and extended it toward him. I was going to give it back, she said. Why take it? Her eyes didn't waver to see if you would come back. Silence. Zaid stared at her. Why does that matter? Because no one comes back? The weight of that truth struck him like stone. In her world, kindness was a performance. A show for cameras, for tourists, for conscience. Money was thrown like scraps. No one stayed. No one asked, no one returned. Zaid sat on the floor. Not like the others, he said. She gave a sad smile. Everyone says that, until they leave. He looked at her again, not just her hunger, but her strength. Her voice had dignity. Her gaze didn't flinch. Her child was clean, wrapped with care. You speak French? He said. Well, I used to be a teacher, before the war, before the floods, before the baby. Zaid swallowed. Where's the father? Dead cholera? And still, she survived. Zaid leaned forward and took the wallet, not with anger, but with care. Keep the money, he said. I didn't want the money. What did you want? To believe someone would care enough to ask? He paused, then let me ask again. What do you need, Aminata? This time, her eyes broke, and for the first time, she cried. The sun over Dakar rose high, white and merciless. Outside, the streets moved with the rhythm of survival horns blaring. Children yelling, street vendors calling out for coins. But inside, the skeleton of the old train station, time had slowed. Zayd sat cross-legged on the floor across from Aminata. For a moment, neither of them said a word. The silence wasn't cold, it was full, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Her child, cradled against her chest, shifted in his sleep. Zaid looked at her closely, not as a foreigner analyzing poverty, but as a man unlearning everything he thought he knew about generosity, about trust, about power. You were a teacher, he finally said, his voice low. She nodded and said, For 8 years, I taught children to read. I gave them books. I told them they could be anything. Her tone didn't carry pride. It carried loss. What happened? She didn't speak for a moment. Then she adjusted the sleeping child on her lap and replied simply, The flood. The floods had ravaged parts of Senegal just 2 years earlier. Entire neighborhoods were swept away overnight. Mud-buried memories. Diseases followed. Zaid remembered the headlines. The shaky drone footage on Western news. The donation links that people clicked and then forgot. After that, she continued, the school was gone. My home was gone. The government gave out tents and food for a few weeks, then nothing. My husband got sick from the water. The baby came. The baby survived. He didn't. Zaid bowed his head slightly. Not in pity. He knew she didn't want that. In respect. What about your family? My mother died. Long ago? My brother, disappeared. I heard he joined a militia. Or maybe he drowned. No one knows. I've been on my own since the baby was inside me. He looked at her again. Not a beggar. Not a thief. A widow. A mother. A survivor. And somehow, she still had grace in her. Zaid glanced down at the wallet in his hand. I can't fix all of this, he said quietly. But I want to help. She tilted her head, skeptical. Why? I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe because no one helped my mother. Aminata blinked. Zaid had never said that out loud. Not to anyone in 20 years. My father abandoned us when I was 7. My mother worked as a maid in Riyadh when she got sick. No one helped. No neighbors. No friends. Not even her own family. We were invisible. He stopped. His throat tightened. The memories were sharp and raw. She died alone in a room she cleaned for strangers. I never forgave myself for not being there. Aminata's voice softened. And now you save strangers to forgive yourself. He didn't answer. She smiled, tired but warm. That's still better than most men do. Zaid exhaled. Suddenly, they were no longer an executive and a homeless woman. They were two people who had survived things they never asked for. Next morning, Zaid returned. This time, he brought more than himself. He brought food, rice, beans, bottles of clean water, baby wipes. He carried it himself, ignoring the guards' protests. Aminata watched from the shadows of the station as he entered again, brushing dirt off his white thobe as he knelt to unpack the bags. You came back? He looked at her. You expected me not to, she shrugged. People promise many things when they feel guilty. I don't feel guilty, he said. I feel responsible. That word responsible stayed in her ears long after the food was unpacked. Over the next days, Zaid kept returning. He didn't stay in his hotel. He moved to a modest guest house near the market. He told his staff not to intervene. He refused. Pressy didn't want attention. He wanted truth. He spent hours with Aminata listening to her stories, watching her feed the baby, asking about the lives of others in the station. He spoke with Sira, who ran the women's corner. He met Bashir, a boy who'd lost both legs to a landmine and now sold scrap metal. He learned about ration thefts, corrupt aid officers, police beatings. For the first time in years, Zaid felt human again. But not everyone saw it that way. 3 nights later, a black SUV pulled up outside Zaid's guest house. It wasn't his. Tall man in a navy suit entered. He was Lebanese, sharp-jawed, clean-shaven. His name was Karim, Zaid's legal counsel for West Africa. Zaid, he said coldly, what the hell are you doing? Zaid looked up from a bowl of fish stew. He was sitting on a wooden stool, barefoot. Living, he said simply. You cancelled meetings with the Senegalese petroleum minister. You ignored calls from Dubai and Qatar. Do you know how much your silence is costing? Zaid didn't flinch. Money comes, money goes. You left behind your security detail. You're walking alone through abandoned train yards. And for what? Some woman who robbed you. Zaid stood up. She returned it. Karim's mouth twisted. And now you're playing savior. You think this makes you a hero? Zaid's eyes narrowed. I don't need to be a hero. I just need to be real. Karim scoffed. This is reckless. You want to help her? Fine. Write a check, build a shelter, donate through the foundation, but you don't get involved personally. That's not how we operate. Zaid walked to the window. Outside, children laughed as they chased a ball made of rags. Maybe it should be how we operate. Karim's voice dropped. You're not thinking clearly. This woman Aminata, do you even know her history? What if she's lying? What if she's manipulating you? Zaid turned slowly. Then I'd rather be manipulated by kindness than controlled by fear. The next day, the press found out. A photo surfaced side in his thob, sitting in the dirt beside Aminata, feeding her baby from a bottle. It exploded across Arab social media. Some praised him. Others called him mad. The billionaire who abandoned his palace for a beggar. Is Zaid al-Rashid converting to Christianity? Has he been cursed? His board sent warnings. Investors called him. His brothers demanded explanations. Zaid shut them all out. He didn't need approval. He needed purpose. He met Aminata again that afternoon. They know about us, he said. She frowned. There is no us. I mean the media? The world? She looked away. Then, it's over. No, you can't be seen with me. They'll destroy you. Zaid smiled, gently. Let them. She looked at him now with something she hadn't shown before. Fear? Zaid. This isn't a fairy tale. I'm not some hidden princess. I have no secret talent. I'm not even sure I can go back to teaching. My French is rusty, my body's tired, I'm ordinary. He reached out and touched her wrist just lightly. You're honest? That's not ordinary. She didn't pull away. I don't know what you want from me, she whispered. I don't want anything. She laughed bitterly. Men always want something. Zaid nodded slowly. Then let me be the first who doesn't. And for a moment, her breath caught. But peace never lasts. That night, 2 men tried to break into the train station. They weren't thieves. They were from a local gang, hired by a politician who wanted Zaid to leave Dakar. His presence was disrupting donor flows and influence structures. Aminata was dragged outside. One of the men struck her. The baby cried. Zaid's guards arrived minutes later. The attackers fled, but the damage had been done. Zaid stood in front of Aminata, blood on her lip, baby in her arms, and something inside him cracked open. This ends now, he said. The next morning, Zaid bought the land, the entire station, with private funds. He signed the deed personally, in front of a stunned government officer. Then he hired engineers to rebuild it, shelter, a school, a clinic, but not under his name. He called it La Maison des Men. The old train station had once been a symbol of abandonment. Cracks split the walls. The roof sagged like tired shoulders. People lived in shadows, not by choice but necessity. It was a place the city pretended didn't exist, but by the 3rd week, it had changed. Bulldozers had cleared the debris. Engineers in blue uniforms moved like ants, coordinating renovations. Portable toilets had been installed. Pipes were laid for running water. The air no longer smelled of rot, but of paint. And progress. In the center of the lot, a tall wooden board had been raised. On it, in bold black letters, read the new name of the project, La Maison d'Aminata. No mention of Zaid, no logo, no donors, just her name. When Aminata first saw it, she froze. She had come out to bring her baby some air. She wasn't expecting to see the entire community gathered, clapping, smiling, looking at her like she was something more than a survivor. Zaid stood off to the side, arms crossed. He wasn't wearing his usual thob. Today, he wore a simple gray shirt and dark jeans. His beard was trimmed, but his face bore the dust and sun of the day. He watched her reaction in silence. Aminata approached him slowly. You used my name. He nodded. It was never about me. But why? Because you represent them, he said. All of them. You were the one who made me come back. You reminded me who I am. She stared at the board again. The letters blurred. She blinked, realizing she was crying again. Zaid lowered his voice. You don't owe me anything, Aminata, but I owe you a part of my soul. By now, the world was watching. Zaid's story had gone global. American news outlets were running headlines like, Arab executive trades, skyscrapers for slums in Africa. In Europe, op-eds praised his raw philanthropy, while others questioned his motives. In the Gulf, reactions were split. Some imams called him a saint. Others labeled him unstable, lost, unfit to lead. But Zayd no longer responded to calls from Dubai. He didn't care. What mattered was happening in Dakar. Every morning, he returned to the site with rolled-up sleeves. He held babies. He swept floors. He stood in line at the community kitchen. His guards gave up trying to stop him. The people of the neighborhood, at first suspicious, now waved at him like an old friend. And Aminata, she changed to Dot. She started walking taller. Her voice grew firmer. The baby was gaining weight. She began helping with logistics, registering women for aid, translating between engineers and locals. She even joined a planning meeting about the future school. But not everything was easy. One afternoon, Aminata was walking through the market when a woman approached her. She was tall, elegant, dressed in an ivory kaftan and gold earrings. Her name was Salma, Zayd's cousin. She had flown in from Abu Dhabi. "You must be Aminata," Salma said, her voice cold. Aminata turned slowly. "And you are?" "I'm family. Of the man whose life you've hijacked." Aminata's heart pounded. "I didn't. You don't need to say it. I've seen your face on every channel. You've become the mascot of his meltdown." Aminata's jaw clenched. "You don't know me." Salma stepped closer. "But I know what women like you do. You look for weak men, pretend to be helpless, then manipulate them. And now he's throwing away a legacy for a woman who couldn't even keep her own home from drowning." People were starting to listen. Aminata's face flushed with humiliation. She whispered, "Zayd is not weak." "No," Salma said with a bitter laugh. "He's broken. And you're the perfect glue chip, disposable, and easy to throw away when he's done playing hero." She left without another word. Aminata stood there, trembling. The applause, the hope, the vision on the wall had cracked. That evening, Zayd found her sitting on the train platform, staring at the dirt. "You didn't come to the meeting," he said softly. She didn't look at him. "I'm tired." He sat beside her. She finally spoke. "Why are you doing this, Zayd?" He frowned. "I told you no." "Why really?" "Because this feels like something more than just charity. It's like you're trying to undo something, or erase something." He was quiet. Then he said, "My mother. She once loved someone forbidden." Aminata turned her head. She loved a Sudanese man, dark-skinned, strong, brilliant, but her family rejected him. My grandfather threatened to cut her off, so she left him. He inhaled deeply. She never forgave herself. She raised me alone, bitter, closed off. She never spoke of love again. He looked at Aminata now. "You remind me of him." She blinked. "Of someone I never knew, but who shaped my life anyway." A long silence passed. "I'm not here to save you," Zayd said. "Maybe I'm here so you can save me." The next day he was gone. No note, no call, no guards. His room was empty. At first, Aminata thought it was punishment, that she had pushed too hard, that her doubts had driven him away. But by evening, the truth came in a flurry of panic. Zayd had been taken. A private jet from Riyadh had landed. Men in diplomatic suits had arrived at the guest house. They claimed urgent family matters and corporate emergency. No one resisted. His passport was still active. No laws were broken, but he had been taken without consent. He hadn't left voluntarily for 3 days. No one heard from him. Aminata returned to the station, hollow-eyed, trying to help the engineers stay on schedule. But her voice faltered. Her body moved slowly. The baby cried more. The people whispered. "He left. He used us. He was never going to stay." Then, on the 4th day, a black car pulled up. And Zayd stepped out. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes burned with clarity. He walked straight to Aminata. "I had to threaten to resign from my own company," he said. "They tried to silence me, lock me away in a mansion. I escaped through a kitchen exit." She laughed, shocked, relieved, furious all at once. "You're crazy." "I've always been. I just hid it in gold." He pulled something from his pocket, a gold plaque, handed it to her. It read, "The woman who taught me to return." Aminata clutched it to her chest and wept. Zayd returned to the project site at dawn. By now, the frame of the new shelter had risen, steel beams aligned, like ribs of a new heart being built into the body of the city. The construction workers paused when they saw him walk in, as if confirming he had truly come back. Then, one by one, they nodded and resumed work. But his body moved slower now. His eyes were heavy. He hadn't slept since his escape. In the quiet corner of the compound, Aminata was sitting beneath a canopy, with her child spoon-feeding him mashed rice and lentils. She looked up the moment she felt his presence, and without a word, he sat beside her. He didn't smile. Neither did she. "You're different," she said softly. He nodded. "They showed me what I'm worth to them, and what I'm not." She stirred the bowl. "Did they threaten you?" He paused. "Yes. Your money, my position, your freedom." He looked at her. "You..." Aminata turned sharply. "Me. They said if I didn't cut ties with you, with this project, they would freeze the assets I inherited from my mother's side, the family trust, the council of elders, my uncles, my cousins, everyone." Her fingers gripped the spoon tighter. "And I told them to do it." The words settled between them like a stone in water. "Zayd," she began, "I meant it when I said I'm not going back. Not just to Riyadh or Dubai. I'm not going back to the man I was. But at What cost? Her voice cracked. Your empire? Your future? No. His eyes were unwavering. I'm building something real now. And if that means losing everything else, then maybe it was never mine to begin with. That same afternoon, the threat escalated. A call came in through one of the site engineers. A government liaison warned them that zoning permits for the shelter were being reviewed. Rumors spread that the Ministry of Infrastructure was preparing to shut down the work for irregularities. Officials who had once smiled at Zaid now ignored his calls. Then came the letter, delivered in a thick cream envelope with gold calligraphy. It bore the seal of the Majlis Al-Irth, the Al-Rashid Family Inheritance Council. Inside, it stated plainly, Zaid Abdul Malik Al-Rashid is hereby suspended from all family business affairs pending psychological evaluation, and all philanthropic actions made in his name are to be ceased immediately. Zaid held the paper in his hands under the light of the guest house lamp. His jaw tightened, his hands didn't shake. But inside he felt the sting of abandonment again. They had always viewed him as the sensitive one, the one who read poetry at university while his brothers studied oil contracts, the one who cried at his mother's funeral, the one who gave away his bonus to a children's hospital without asking for a press release. And now he had proven them right. Aminata found him standing alone on the roof of the guest house that night. The city lights blinked like distant promises. From there, they could see the construction site, the skeleton of what they were building together. You should leave, she said. He didn't look at her. You've done more than enough. You gave us a voice. You gave me a name again. But if you stay, they'll destroy you. Zaid shook his head. I didn't come here to change you, Aminata. You changed me. You reminded me that giving is not about what you have. It's about what you're willing to lose. She stepped beside him. So lose everything. Is that it? He turned. I already lost my mother. I won't lose myself too. She looked away. Then what do you want from me? He hesitated, then said, nothing. But I have something to give. From his pocket, he pulled a key, simple, silver, on a red ribbon. This is to a new apartment. Outside the city, clean water, 2 rooms, solar panels. It's yours. No cameras, no names, just safety. Her eyes filled again. Why? He stepped closer. Because your life shouldn't depend on mine. She stared at the key, but didn't take it. Later that week, while Zaid met with the shelter's legal team, Aminata was approached by a journalist from Le Monde Afrique. She was polite, French-accented, and curious. Her name was Laure. I'd like to tell your story, she said. I don't have a story, Aminata replied. Laure smiled. You're wrong. You're the woman who changed a billionaire's life. You're being studied by universities. You're becoming a symbol. I never asked to be. That's why they care. She left her card. That night, Aminata held it in her hand for a long time. Then she dropped it into the fire. Meanwhile, pressure mounted. Zaid received notice that 2 of his companies, one in Morocco, another in Kuwait, were under tax investigation. His lawyer, Karim, called from Dubai. They're suffocating you. Zaid, quietly, but completely. Let them. They're also calling Aminata a witch, a manipulator. The same politicians you've embarrassed are spreading lies. You're not just in trouble, you're dangerous now. To them, Zaid stared at the wall, then calmly said, then they'll see what dangerous compassion looks like. One night, a rock shattered the window of Aminata's apartment. She was feeding the baby when it happened. Glass exploded across the floor. Outside, someone yelled, "Slut of the desert." She screamed, pulling her child into her arms. Zaid arrived minutes later. The baby was unhurt. Aminata had a small cut on her arm, but something inside her had snapped. I can't keep doing this, she said through gritted teeth. You say you want to protect me, but your name puts a target on us both. Your kindness is making me bleed. Zaid knelt beside her. I'll leave if that's what you want. She stared at him. No. He looked up. I want you to stay, but not like this. I want you to fight. For what? For us. And so, he did. Zaid launched a public statement. A recorded video, raw and unfiltered, shared across every major platform. He spoke of power, of privilege, of a boy who had everything but never felt seen, and a woman who had nothing but refused to be invisible. He exposed the corruption of the local bureaucracy, the threats, the sabotage. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for conscience. And the world listened. Donations poured in. Human rights organizations began investigating the attacks. French and German politicians praised him. Even Oprah's team reached out. But most importantly, Aminata stepped forward beside him, not in his shadow, but as his equal. She stood in front of a crowd of journalists and said, I am not a miracle, I am not a symbol. I am a woman who was allowed to survive long enough to speak. And now that I have a voice again, I will use it to help others find theirs. The crowd erupted in applause, but for Zaid it was her smile, fragile and fierce, that meant everything. The night after the speech, Aminata couldn't sleep. The baby was calm, curled against her chest like a question mark, but inside her, a storm brewed. The applause, the praise, the sudden interest in her words, it had all been real, but it had also awakened something she had tried for years to bury. She sat up in bed and stared at the ceiling. Then, without waking her son, she quietly rose, wrapped herself in a shawl, and stepped out into the night air. The city was quieter now. The reporters had left, the shelter workers had gone to sleep. Only the streetlights hummed above the nearly finished frame of Lamaz and Aminata and Zaid. He stood at the far end of the courtyard, watching the stars as if searching for some ancient answer. "You can't sleep either," she said. He turned, and for a moment, there was only silence. Between them, "You were incredible today," he said. "You didn't just speak, you commanded." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were distant. "Zaid, I need to tell you something." He raised an eyebrow. "Go on." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "My name. It's not really Aminata." He blinked. "What it is now, but it wasn't always." She looked down, ashamed. "My real name is Fatou Keita. Aminata was the name of my older sister. She died during the floods. When we were trying to escape the rising water, she slipped under. I tried to hold her hand, but she was too small. I was too slow." Zaid didn't speak. "I carried her name as a way to survive. People remembered her. She had better manners. She had softer eyes. She was someone the world didn't ignore." Zaid's voice was low. "And you thought I needed her, not you. I thought everyone needed her, and if I became her, maybe they'd listen." A silence stretched between them. It wasn't judgment. It was wait. Zayd finally said, "You didn't lie. You lived. You did what you had to." She nodded, her voice breaking. "But I don't want to live under a name that isn't mine anymore." "Then reclaim it." She looked up at him. "I want the shelter's name to change? From La Maison de Manada to La Maison de Tos, the house of all." Zaid stared at her, then slowly smiled a soft, proud, broken smile. "I knew you'd outgrow the name I gave you." The next morning, the news broke, and it wasn't from them. A blog post appeared, supposedly from a close source within the Al-Rushed family. It accused Aminata of faking her identity to access Zaid's wealth. It claimed she had used the flood records to assume a dead girl's name. It hinted that she was involved in the theft of Zaid's wallet, not as a desperate act, but as part of a scheme. The article went viral within hours. By noon, international headlines were running stories. Was the woman who inspired a billionaire lying all along? Is Aminata even real? Worse, the donations stopped. Emails flooded in. Donors withdrew pledges, builders paused their work, lawyers grew silent. What once felt like a movement had become a scandal. And Zaid, he was furious, but not at her. At them. "They couldn't break me," he muttered, pacing his office. "So they're trying to break you." Aminata stood by the window, arms folded. "Maybe they're not wrong. Don't say that. I did use her name. I did take your wallet. They're twisting the truth, but the bones of it are real." "And what about my truth?" he said. "That I chose to stay. That I knew from the beginning you weren't perfect. That I didn't need a saint, I needed you." She turned sharply. "Then why does it hurt so much?" Because they weren't just attacking her. They were rewriting her, turning her resilience into manipulation, her survival into scandal. And Zaid knew how fast a public tide could turn. That afternoon, while the construction site sat in tense silence, a black car arrived. A man stepped out, dressed in a cream tunic and gold glasses. He looked refined, commanding. It was Khalid Al-Rushed, Zaid's eldest brother. Zaid met him at the gate. "I told you not to come," Zaid said coldly. Khalid smiled. "I don't listen well." He looked around at the unfinished buildings. "So this is what you've chosen over your legacy?" "I am my legacy," Zaid replied. Khalid nodded thoughtfully. "She fooled you." Zaid didn't blink. "No. You fooled yourselves into thinking compassion is weakness." Khalid sighed. "The board is calling for a permanent dismissal. You'll be removed from every title, every account." "I already knew. And the girl? She's staying." Khalid stared at him for a long moment, then said, almost softly, "You were always the heart, Zaid, but the heart bleeds." And with that, he turned and left. That night, Zaid found Aminata sitting outside again. "I lost it all," he said. She nodded. "So did I." They sat in silence. The baby slept in her lap. The city buzzed around them, but they were in a pocket of stillness. Then Zaid said something she never expected. "Marry me." She looked at him like he had lost his mind. "What? Marry me?" She stood. "Zaid, no, that's not what this is. That's not why I know," he interrupted. "I'm not asking because I'm in love. I'm asking because I believe in us, in what we build, in what we fight for. This is bigger than either of us now." She shook her head. "We'd be mocked, dissected. You'd be called a fool. I'd be called worse." He stepped closer. "I don't care." She touched his face. "I do." He didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. Instead, he whispered, "Then we keep building, married or not, together or not, as long as this matters." She nodded, and for the first time in days, they smiled. The next morning, a new sign was raised at the shelter. Maison de Tos, the house of all. Beneath it, in smaller letters, "In honor of truth, not perfection." And beneath that, in paint that wasn't part of the original design, "Fatou lives here." 1 year later, the woman with no name had become the face of a movement. Fatou Keita stood before a classroom of 17 children. Chalk in hand, her braided hair wrapped in a vibrant scarf, her voice steady. Outside, the midday sun beat against the tin roofs. But inside La Maison de Tos, the temperature was perfect. Solar-powered fans spun quietly. and the air smelled faintly of shea butter and clean wood. "Who can tell me the meaning of dignity?" she asked. A small boy raised his hand. "It's when you don't let people treat you like garbage." The class giggled. Fatu smiled gently. "Almost. Dignity is when you remember you're not garbage, even when others try to forget it." The kids nodded. Her voice carried weight, not because it was loud, but because it came from truth. Behind her, on the chalkboard, a faded sticker remained. It read, "This school was built with hands, not money." Zaid hadn't returned in weeks, not because he'd abandoned the project, but because the government had opened investigations against his old companies. A warrant had been issued in Kuwait. His assets in Riyadh were frozen. Even his private jet had been seized. He lived now in Nairobi, in a small apartment over a bakery, where he consulted pro bono for a refugee legal team. He answered emails, he gave lectures, but he never stopped sending supplies, never stopped funding the school anonymously, quietly, without a signature. And Fatu knew every package, every transfer, every medicine box stamped with a strange, anonymous donor code. Shia knew it was him. He had kept his promise. Even after losing everything. That autumn, she received a letter, handwritten, no return address. But she knew the handwriting like her own breath. "Fatu, I miss the sound of your silence. I miss your son's laugh. I miss the version of myself I met under that broken awning in Dakar. The world still asks me why I did what I did. And I tell them, I stopped making decisions based on fear. I started making them based on who I wanted to be when no one was watching. They took my empire, but they gave me something else. Proof that what we built mattered. That it wasn't just architecture. It was resurrection. If they let me come back, I will. But if they don't, keep going without me. You were never my project, you were my beginning. Always." Zaid Fatu held the paper for a long time. Then she folded it and placed it into the drawer beneath the school's only working printer beside the baby's old hospital ID tag and the photograph of her sister Aminata. The months passed, quietly but steadily. The second floor of the shelter opened. The first mothers moved in, 9 of them, each with children and stories no one had ever wanted to hear. They were given beds, therapy, sewing machines, respect. Fatu began organizing community events, story nights, women's circles, teacher trainings. Once the mayor of Dakar came for a visit. He offered her a government position. She declined. "I already work for my people," she said. "Why would I settle for less?" That quote landed in a national newspaper. Donations rose again, slowly, but authentically. This time, people weren't giving because of a scandal. They were giving because of her. Fatu Katone no longer hiding. Behind a name, no longer asking for permission to exist, but not everything healed neatly. The truth is, some wounds remain open, even when they no longer bleed. At night, when the compound was quiet, Fatu would sometimes walk to the edge of the property where the old train platform still stood, untouched, preserved, like a memory frozen in stone. That was where Zaid had first asked for her name, where he'd first knelt beside her, where he had once placed his wallet in her hands, not knowing she had already taken it. She had returned it that same day. But the weight of that moment never left her. It was the first thing she had stolen in her life, and the first thing she had truly been given. Then one morning, nearly a year after his exile, a boy ran through the school's main hallway, waving a cell phone. "Miss Fatu. Miss Fatu, look." She took the phone gently. On the screen, a video was playing. Zayd-older, thinner, dressed in worn linen, was sitting on a panel at a human rights forum in Geneva. His voice was calm, powerful, unapologetic. "I am not here to redeem myself. I'm here because I believe charity is not an act of kindness, it's a debt we owe to the parts of ourselves we forget when we're busy chasing titles. I lost everything, but I found home. And home isn't where you're born, it's where you finally stop running." Tears filled her eyes. 1 week later, he came back. No guards, no fanfare, just a backpack, and the same quiet eyes that had looked at her on that dirt road 1 year ago. She saw him from across the yard. She didn't run, she didn't cry, she walked straight toward him. The children stopped playing, the staff stepped aside. Even the sun seemed to pause. He stood still as she approached, and when she reached him, she didn't speak, she just opened her arms. He stepped into them, and finally, they both let go. That night, under the stars, sitting side by side on the platform where it had all begun, Fatu whispered, "So what now?" Zaid smiled. "Now, we build the next school." She laughed. "You never stop." "No, because people like us don't get to. Not until every child has a classroom. Not until every woman has a bed. Not until no one has to steal to be seen." She reached for his hand. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. He looked at her. "I never was." And so, they built. Not an empire of glass towers or oil fields, but a legacy of people. People who remembered what it meant to care. If this story touched your heart, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who still believes in courage, in redemption, and in the power of 2 people choosing each other over fear. Because real wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the lives we choose to change. At first glance, this is the story of a billionaire Arab executive and a homeless African woman. But within minutes, it becomes clear that this isn't a story about wealth or charity. It's a story about humanity, about what happens when someone dares to look beyond appearances and sees a soul. It's a story about the cost of connection and the price of choosing compassion over power. Zayd al-Rashid begins the story as a man who seemingly has it all. He wears custom suits, owns half a dozen companies, and moves through the world with a kind of authority that opens doors and silences rooms. And yet, his life is quietly hollow. He lives surrounded by Yasmin, family expectations, and the residue of inherited wealth, but not love, not purpose, not truth. That begins to change the moment he stops his luxury car on a dusty street in Dakar. There, sitting alone in the dirt, is Amina, a barefoot woman with nothing but a sleeping child on her back, and a look in her eyes that speaks louder than any cry for help. She doesn't beg, she doesn't sell pity, she just is. And somehow, that's what shakes him. When Zayd gives her money, and she takes his wallet in return, it seems like betrayal. But the true twist isn't what she did, it's why. 2. See if you'd come back, she says later. And in that single sentence, the emotional heart of the story explodes open. She wasn't testing him as a thief. She was testing him as a man, as someone who claimed to care, because no one ever comes back. But Zayd does, and that's where the transformation begins. For both of them, this story touches so deeply because it strips power down to its core. Zayd learns that true wealth isn't in stocks or assets, it's in witnessing, in standing beside someone long enough to see them clearly. Fatou, on the other hand, reclaims her voice not because Zayd saves her, but because he listens to her, because he stays, because he believes in her truth. Even after it's questioned by the entire world, the decision to rename the shelter La Maison d'Aminata, and later La Maison de Tos, becomes a powerful metaphor. It's not just about honoring her, it's about honoring everyone who has been silenced, abandoned, or forced to become someone else to survive. Fatou's choice to reclaim her real name, to step out from behind a borrowed identity, is the most courageous moment in the story, because it's not easy to be seen for who you truly are, especially after being praised for who you pretended to be. What makes this story unforgettable is that it refuses to give us a neat, sanitized version of redemption. Fatou isn't perfect. She stole. She lied about her name. But those flaws are woven from desperation, not malice. And Zayd isn't a savior. He's a broken man looking for something real. When they find each other, they don't fall into romance, they fall into recognition. That choice alone makes the story rare and beautiful. And then comes the backlash. The media attacks, the withdrawal of support, the resurfacing of family politics, the unraveling of Zayd's empire. The moment when Fatou's name is turned into a weapon, and her past becomes ammunition for those who can't stand to see power challenged by authenticity. Even then, especially then, she stands tall. I was not a miracle. I was not a symbol. I was a woman allowed to survive long enough to speak. That line is devastating and liberating, because in a world that constantly tries to package trauma as inspiration, Fatou refuses. She reclaims control of the narrative. She speaks not to be applauded, but to remind others that survival is not a performance. It's an act of rebellion. And Zayd loses everything. Companies, reputation, status, family support, but what he gains is far more powerful: clarity, purpose, freedom. He learns that doing the right thing doesn't always lead to often leads to punishment. But he also learns that if you can survive that punishment with your heart intact, you win. Not because the world clapped for you, but because you didn't betray yourself. The emotional crescendo of the story is not the reunion, it's the silence that surrounds it. When Zayd finally returns, after nearly a year in exile, there's no speech, no confession, no grand declarations of love. There's just Fatou walking, not running toward the man who saw her before anyone else did. And when they embrace, it's not romantic, it's holy. The story ends not with a wedding, or a fortune regained, but with a vow to keep building, to keep choosing the harder road, because both of them know now, the cost of compassion is high, but the cost of living without it is soul, death. In the end, Arab executive gave money to a poor African homeless woman, and she stole his wallet is not just a headline. It's a parable for our times. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin in the quietest places: in stolen wallets, in borrowed names, in dusty train stations where no one is supposed to look. It reminds us that dignity isn't given, it's reclaimed. That love doesn't always look like romance, it looks like staying. That wealth isn't about what you own, it's about what you choose to lose for someone else to rise. And most of all, it reminds us that sometimes a story can be more than a story. It can be a mirror, and if we're brave enough to look into it, we just might change too.